Rechelle Vargas is an outgoing and ambitious accounting student in her final year at Silverwood University. Known for her bubbly personality and knack for improvisation, she often finds herself juggling internships, group projects, and her dreams of breaking into the advertising world. But beneath her cheerful exterior lies a growing anxiety about her uncertain future. One evening, Rechelle's roommate, Tanya, drops an unexpected bombshell. Tanya's cousin, Florence Navarro, needs a place to stay temporarily due to renovations at his dorm. Rechelle, already overwhelmed with deadlines and her chaotic life, reluctantly agrees, dreading the awkwardness of sharing her space with a stranger. Florence arrives the next day, and his first impression is anything but welcoming. A reserved and meticulous physics student, Florence is the polar opposite of Rechelle. His serious demeanor and overly structured personality clash immediately with Rechelle's free-spirited nature. The apartment, once a place of comfort for Rechelle, feels like a ticking time bomb as they navigate their awkward cohabitation. The first week of Florence's stay is marked by passive-aggressive exchanges. Florence, a stickler for order, sets up a rigid schedule for cleaning, cooking, and shared spaces. Rechelle, who thrives in creative chaos, is horrified by his meticulousness. Their clashes escalate when Florence catches Rechelle eating chips over the living room couch, leaving crumbs behind. In retaliation, Florence reorganizes her kitchen cabinets without her permission, labeling every item meticulously. Rechelle retaliates by playing loud music while studying, ignoring Florence's strict, quiet hours. Despite their constant bickering, a few moments of unexpected camaraderie start to emerge. One night, as Florence struggles with an advanced physics problem, Rechelle jokingly suggests a creative solution. To her surprise, it inspires him to think differently, sparking a breakthrough in his research. Meanwhile, Florence inadvertently helps Rechelle organize her chaotic study schedule, teaching her how to prioritize tasks effectively. Rechelle's advertising internship assigns her a daunting project: creating a marketing pitch for a fictional product to present in front of her entire department. Overwhelmed and out of her depth, she spends a sleepless night brainstorming ideas, only to find Florence sitting at the kitchen table with his laptop, deep in thought. Noticing her frustration, Florence hesitantly offers to help, using his analytical skills to break down the problem into manageable steps. Rechelle is initially skeptical but soon realizes his approach has merit. Together, they create a presentation that blends her creativity with his logical structure. On the day of the presentation, Rechelle aces it, impressing her supervisor and earning praise from her peers. She grudgingly thanks Florence, who brushes it off with a shrug, claiming it was just simple logic. However, Rechelle notices a small, proud smile on his face, a rare moment of warmth from her stoic roommate. As Florence and Rechelle continue to live together, their interactions become less hostile and more playful. Florence begins to tolerate Rechelle's messy habits, while Rechelle starts respecting his need for order. Their late-night talks, initially focused on mundane topics, gradually delve into deeper conversations about their dreams and fears. Rechelle learns that Florence, despite his brilliant mind, struggles with connecting to others. His past experiences have made him wary of forming close relationships, leading him to focus solely on his studies. Meanwhile, Florence discovers that Rechelle's cheerful demeanor masks her insecurities about the future and her fear of failure. A pivotal moment occurs when Florence accidentally overhears Rechelle practicing a self-doubt-filled monologue in front of the mirror. Instead of teasing her, he leaves a handwritten note on the fridge the next morning. "You're more capable than you think. Don't let doubt hold you back." Rechelle is deeply moved by his gesture, realizing that beneath Florence's stoic exterior lies a kind and supportive heart. Their bond continues to grow, setting the stage for the challenges and joys that lie ahead in their unconventional partnership. As Florence and Rechelle adjust to their unusual living arrangement, their dynamic begins to shift. Rechelle, initially frustrated by Florence's rigid routines, starts to appreciate the calm his structured approach brings to their shared space. Florence, in turn, finds himself quietly admiring Rechelle's ability to inject color and energy into even the dullest moments. Their tentative friendship faces its first real test when Rechelle's best friend, Carla, visits their apartment unannounced. Carla, a hopeless romantic, immediately assumes Florence and Rechelle are a couple and bombards them with teasing remarks. Rechelle hastily denies any romantic involvement, while Florence, clearly uncomfortable, remains silent. Later that evening, Rechelle tries to apologize for Carla's behavior, but Florence surprises her by brushing it off with a faint smile. "It's not the worst assumption," he says, leaving Rechelle momentarily speechless. Though she laughs it off, her heart skips a beat, a feeling she struggles to understand. One weekend, Rechelle convinces Florence to accompany her to an outdoor festival in the bustling city square of Silverwood. Florence, hesitant at first, agrees reluctantly after much persuasion. The vibrant atmosphere of the festival is a stark contrast to Florence's usual quiet world. Rechelle, eager to share her love for life's little joys, drags him to food stalls, carnival games, and even a fortune-telling booth. Though Florence initially feels out of place, he begins to enjoy himself, especially when Rechelle bursts into laughter after winning a small stuffed toy for him at a dart game. As the night unfolds, the two find themselves caught in a sudden rainstorm. They take refuge under a nearby gazebo, where Rechelle teases Florence for his rain-soaked, disheveled look. Florence, for the first time, joins in her laughter, and in that moment, their differences seem to melt away. Before they leave, Rechelle impulsively takes a photo of them together, capturing their shared smiles. She later prints the photo and tucks it into a corner of the fridge as a memento of their growing friendship. Florence begins to notice how much Rechelle's presence has changed his life. Once confined to the lab and his academic pursuits, he now finds himself looking forward to their shared dinners, late-night conversations, and even their playful arguments. Rechelle, on the other hand, starts to feel a strange pull toward Florence. His quiet strength and thoughtful gestures stand in stark contrast to the outgoing personalities she's typically drawn to. Despite her growing feelings, she keeps them to herself, unsure if Florence sees her as anything more than a friend. Their unspoken emotions come to a head during a power outage in their apartment one evening. With no electricity to distract them, they light candles and settle in the living room, sharing stories from their past. Florence opens up about his struggles with loneliness, while Rechelle admits her fear of failure and disappointing her family. As the night deepens, Rechelle jokingly rests her head on Florence's shoulder, saying, "You're surprisingly comfortable." Florence stiffens but doesn't pull away. Neither of them says anything, but the moment lingers, leaving them both with a sense that their relationship is slowly evolving into something deeper. The power outage marks a turning point in Florence and Rechelle's relationship. They become more attuned to each other's needs, offering support in ways that feel natural and effortless. Florence starts brewing Rechelle's favorite coffee every morning, while Rechelle makes it a point to include Florence in her weekend plans, coaxing him out of his academic bubble. One day, Rechelle invites Florence to join her at her advertising internship's open house. Initially hesitant, Florence agrees, curious to see her in her element. Watching her present her ideas with confidence and passion, Florence feels a sense of pride he can't quite explain. After the event, Florence surprises Rechelle by complimenting her creativity. "You're not just good at what you do," he says, "you make people believe in it." Rechelle, touched by his sincerity, thanks him, realizing how much his opinion has come to matter to her. Their growing bond doesn't go unnoticed by their friends, who tease them relentlessly about their closeness. Rechelle deflects their comments with jokes, but a part of her wonders if there's more truth to their words than she's willing to admit. As they return to their apartment that evening, Florence notices Rechelle staring at the photo on the fridge. "Do you ever think about how we ended up here?" she asks. Florence, after a moment of thought, replies, "All the time." Though the words are simple, they carry a weight that leaves Rechelle questioning the true nature of their connection. Life seems to settle into an almost perfect rhythm for Florence and Rechelle. Their differences no longer clash, but complement each other. Florence's logical, steady nature tempers Rechelle's chaotic creativity, and her lively, impulsive personality brings color to his otherwise monotonous days. However, their growing harmony is disrupted when an unexpected visitor arrives: Marlon, Rechelle's childhood friend and former crush. Marlon's arrival throws Florence off balance. Charming, confident, and effortlessly charismatic, Marlon quickly becomes the center of attention. He wastes no time rekindling his close bond with Rechelle, reminiscing about their shared memories and making her laugh with his playful teasing. Florence, watching from the sidelines, feels an unfamiliar pang of jealousy. Rechelle, oblivious to Florence's discomfort, is thrilled to have Marlon back in her life. She begins spending more time with him, leaving Florence to navigate the sudden void in their shared routines. Though he tries to ignore it, Florence finds himself missing her presence more than he anticipated. Marlon's frequent visits spark an unspoken rivalry between him and Florence. While Marlon effortlessly engages Rechelle with his humor and charm, Florence begins finding small, thoughtful ways to show his care. He starts preparing Rechelle's favorite meals, helping her with late-night brainstorming sessions, and even offering quiet words of encouragement when she's feeling overwhelmed. Rechelle, caught between the two men, begins to sense the tension but chooses to dismiss it, focusing instead on her busy schedule. However, her growing closeness to Marlon makes her realize how much she values Florence's quiet support. One evening, Marlon invites Rechelle to a rooftop party, urging her to take a break from her stressful life. She hesitates but agrees, leaving Florence behind at the apartment. Alone for the first time in weeks, Florence finds himself restless, his mind replaying moments with Rechelle. He finally admits to himself that his feelings for her have grown deeper than friendship. At the party, Rechelle finds herself distracted, her thoughts drifting back to Florence. When Marlon tries to rekindle their old chemistry, she realizes it feels forced compared to the effortless connection she shares with her housemate. She excuses herself early, returning to the apartment to find Florence waiting up for her. Their eyes meet, and though no words are exchanged, an unspoken understanding passes between them. As Rechelle begins to sort through her feelings, an innocent moment leads to a misunderstanding that threatens to unravel her bond with Florence. One afternoon, Marlon surprises Rechelle at her internship, bringing flowers to congratulate her on a successful presentation. Florence happens to walk in at the same moment and misinterprets the scene, assuming the flowers are a romantic gesture. Hurt but unwilling to show it, Florence withdraws, becoming distant and reserved. Rechelle, puzzled by his sudden coldness, tries to reach out, but Florence brushes her off, focusing on his research. The warmth and ease that once defined their relationship are replaced by a tense, awkward silence. Feeling frustrated and confused, Rechelle confronts Florence one evening, demanding to know what's wrong. "Why does it matter?" Florence retorts, his voice sharper than she's ever heard. "You have Marlon now." His words sting, but they also force Rechelle to confront her own feelings. "Marlon is just a friend," she says, her voice trembling. "I thought you knew me better than that." Florence's expression softens, but before he can respond, Rechelle leaves the room, her heart heavy with unresolved emotions. The rift between Florence and Rechelle lingers, but both find themselves yearning to repair their bond. One evening, Rechelle decides to break the silence by preparing Florence's favorite dish, a small gesture of reconciliation. Florence, surprised by her effort, joins her in the kitchen, their interaction tentative but warm. As they share the meal, Florence finally opens up about his insecurities, admitting that he felt overshadowed by Marlon. Rechelle, touched by his honesty, reassures him, "You don't have to compete with anyone, Florence. You're already important to me." Her words mark a turning point in their relationship. They spend the rest of the evening talking and laughing, the tension between them easing into the comfortable rhythm they once shared. However, beneath the surface, both Florence and Rechelle are acutely aware that their feelings for each other are no longer platonic. The chapter ends with a quiet but poignant moment. Florence walking Rechelle to her room. As she turns to say goodnight, he hesitates, then gently tucks a strand of hair behind her ear. "Good night, Rechelle," he says softly, his gaze lingering a moment longer than necessary. Rechelle closes her door, her heart racing, as the line between friendship and love begins to blur irrevocably. Life begins to regain its rhythm for Florence and Rechelle, but the emotional undercurrent between them remains. They tiptoe around their growing feelings, neither ready to confront the truth. Their tenuous peace is disrupted when Rechelle's mother unexpectedly visits Silverwood, bringing unwelcome news. Her mother announces that a family acquaintance has proposed an arranged marriage for Rechelle. Though the proposal is merely a suggestion, her mother's insistence on considering it places immense pressure on Rechelle. She is frustrated but unable to reject it outright, fearing to disappoint her family. Florence, overhearing their conversation, is quietly alarmed by the idea of Rechelle marrying someone else. That night, as Rechelle vents her frustrations, Florence listens intently. Finally, after a moment of hesitation, he offers a surprising suggestion. "Why don't you tell her you're already in a relationship?" Rechelle stares at him in disbelief. "And who exactly would I claim to be dating?" Florence meets her gaze, his voice steady. "Me." Though skeptical at first, Rechelle realizes it's a plausible solution to her problem. They agree to fake a relationship, setting boundaries to ensure things don't get too complicated. Yet, both are acutely aware of how their act might blur the lines of their already fragile friendship. The following weekend, Rechelle and Florence host a dinner for her mother to introduce him as her boyfriend. Florence surprises Rechelle by stepping into his role with unexpected ease. He is polite, attentive, and convincing, winning her mother over with his calm demeanor and thoughtful responses. Rechelle, caught off guard by Florence's dedication to the act, finds herself seeing him in a new light. She marvels at his ability to adapt, realizing how little she truly knows about the man she's been living with. However, the charade isn't without its complications. Rechelle's mother insists on staying for a few days to get to know Florence better, forcing the pair to keep up appearances around the clock. Small gestures, a hand on her back, a shared smile, the way he softly says her name, begin to feel too real, leaving Rechelle questioning her own feelings. Florence, too, finds himself struggling to separate the act from his emotions. Each moment spent with Rechelle deepens his admiration for her, making it harder to remind himself that their relationship is supposed to be pretend. As the days pass, Florence and Rechelle's fake relationship becomes increasingly convincing, not just to others, but to themselves. One evening, after an exhausting day of keeping up the charade, the two find themselves alone on the apartment balcony. The city lights of Silverwood twinkle in the distance, creating a serene backdrop for their conversation. Rechelle, visibly drained, leans against the railing and sighs. "This is harder than I thought it would be," she admits. Florence, standing beside her, offers a rare moment of vulnerability. "It's harder for me too," he says quietly, his gaze fixed on the horizon. Rechelle turns to him, surprised by the admission. "Why?" Florence hesitates, then looks at her. "Because sometimes it feels too real." The weight of his words hangs between them, the unspoken emotions finally surfacing. Rechelle, overwhelmed, doesn't know how to respond. Instead, she gently rests her head on his shoulder, mirroring a gesture from their past. Florence doesn't pull away, allowing the moment to stretch into the night. Rechelle's mother finally departs, convinced of their relationship's authenticity. With the pressure lifted, Florence and Rechelle return to their daily routines, but the lingering tension between them refuses to dissipate. One evening, Florence accompanies Rechelle to a gallery opening hosted by her advertising firm. The event is bustling with Silverwood's elite, but Florence remains focused on Rechelle, admiring her confidence as she navigates the crowd. During the evening, Rechelle's boss introduces her to a potential client, a charming but overly forward businessman named Victor. Victor's flirtatious remarks make Rechelle uncomfortable, and Florence, noticing her unease, steps in. "She's with me," he says firmly, wrapping an arm around her waist. The simple gesture sends a ripple through Rechelle's heart. After the event, as they walk home under the glow of streetlights, She thanks him for his intervention. "You didn't have to do that," she says softly. Florence stops walking and turns to her. "I wanted to," he replies, his voice earnest. Before Rechelle can process his words, a sudden downpour interrupts them. Laughing, they run the rest of the way home, soaked by the time they reach their apartment. In the dim light of their entryway, something shifts between them. Florence brushes a wet strand of hair from Rechelle's face, his touch lingering. For a moment, it feels as though the world has narrowed to just the two of them. Neither moves, neither speaks, but the unspoken truth of their feelings is undeniable. The rain-soaked evening leaves Florence and Rechelle in emotional turmoil. Neither speaks of the charged moment they shared in the entryway, but its impact lingers in their interactions. Florence becomes more protective, while Rechelle finds herself paying closer attention to his subtle gestures of care. A week later, during a cozy night at home, Florence and Rechelle are watching a movie when the power unexpectedly goes out. In the soft glow of candlelight, they begin sharing stories about their childhoods, their laughter filling the room. As the conversation deepens, Florence shares a rare personal memory about his father, who always encouraged him to follow his passion for science despite societal expectations. Moved by his vulnerability, Rechelle places her hand over his. "Your father would be proud of the person you've become," she says softly. The atmosphere shifts as Florence gazes into her eyes. Unable to resist the pull between them, he leans in, and their lips meet in a tender, unplanned kiss. The moment is electric, filled with both hesitation and longing. But as reality sets in, Rechelle pulls away, her mind racing. "We can't do this," she whispers, retreating to her room. Florence, left alone, feels a mix of regret and frustration. The kiss, though brief, has changed everything. The kiss creates a rift between Florence and Rechelle. In the days that follow, Rechelle avoids him, burying herself in work to escape her confusion. Florence, on the other hand, struggles to navigate the sudden distance. He wants to talk to her, to understand her feelings, but fears pushing her further away. Meanwhile, Rechelle finds herself distracted during her advertising presentations and brainstorming sessions. Her thoughts keep drifting back to Florence, his steady presence, his thoughtful gestures, and the undeniable chemistry they share. She begins questioning her own emotions, realizing that her resistance stems from fear. Fear of ruining their friendship, fear of the unknown, and fear of falling too hard. Florence, unable to bear the silence, finally decides to break it. One evening, he confronts Rechelle in the kitchen. "We need to talk," he says, his voice firm but gentle. Rechelle hesitates before nodding, gesturing for him to sit. Florence takes a deep breath. "I know the kiss caught us both off guard, but I can't pretend it didn't happen. I need to know, what are we, Rechelle?" Caught off guard by his directness, Rechelle admits, "I don't know. I'm scared, Florence. I don't want to lose what we have." Her words both comfort and frustrate him. "I don't want to lose you either," he says, but pretending nothing's changed isn't the answer. Though their conversation doesn't resolve everything, it marks a step forward. They agree to take things slow, allowing their relationship to evolve naturally. Just as Florence and Rechelle begin to rebuild their connection, an unexpected challenge arises. Rechelle's boss offers her a career-defining opportunity to lead an advertising campaign for a luxury brand, but it requires her to relocate to Belmont, a neighboring city, for 3 months. The news leaves Florence stunned. He congratulates her, but his enthusiasm feels forced. Rechelle, sensing his unease, assures him that their relationship can withstand the distance. "It's only 3 months," she says, trying to convince herself as much as him. Despite her optimism, their impending separation creates an undercurrent of tension. Florence begins pulling away, his insecurities bubbling to the surface. He worries that Rechelle's new environment, filled with ambitious and accomplished individuals, will diminish his importance in her life. Their farewell is bittersweet. At the train station, Rechelle promises to call every day, but Florence's smile doesn't reach his eyes. As the train pulls away, both are left grappling with their emotions. Rechelle's time in Belmont is both exciting and exhausting. The once effortless connection between them begins to feel strained. One evening, Rechelle calls Florence after a particularly stressful day. Her voice cracks as she admits, "I miss you." Florence's heart aches at her vulnerability. "I miss you too," he replies softly. Their conversation rekindles the warmth between them, but it also highlights the challenge of maintaining their bond across the distance. Florence realizes that his feelings for Rechelle have grown beyond what he ever imagined. Determined to support her, he begins planning a surprise visit to Belmont. Meanwhile, Rechelle reflects on her priorities, recognizing that her happiness feels incomplete without Florence by her side. Florence arrives in Belmont unannounced, carrying a bouquet of lilies, Rechelle's favorite flowers. He has planned the visit meticulously, coordinating with Rechelle's assistant to ensure she'll be at her apartment. When Rechelle opens the door and sees Florence standing there, her expression shifts from shock to pure joy. "What are you doing here?" she asks, her voice trembling with emotion. "I missed you," Florence says simply, "and I wanted to see you." Rechelle pulls him into a tight hug, her emotions overwhelming her. His presence feels like a balm to her frazzled nerves. That evening, they share a quiet dinner in her apartment, catching up on everything they've missed. Florence's genuine interest in her work and his thoughtful compliments remind Rechelle of how much he supports her ambitions. The weekend becomes a cherished memory for both of them. Florence accompanies Rechelle to a work event, proudly introducing himself as her partner. His charm and quiet confidence impress her colleagues, dispelling any doubts she had about blending her professional and personal lives. As Florence prepares to leave, the goodbye is bittersweet but less heavy than before. Their bond feels stronger, reinforced by their shared commitment to making the relationship work despite the distance. Back in Silverwood, Florence's life returns to its usual rhythm, but a seed of insecurity begins to grow. While he trusts Rechelle implicitly, a lingering doubt gnaws at him after hearing her mention a particular colleague, Daniel, during her work updates. Daniel is a fellow creative director in Belmont who has become a reliable friend to Rechelle. She often talks about his innovative ideas and the way he's helped her navigate the demanding environment. Though her tone is purely platonic, Florence can't help but feel a pang of jealousy. One evening, during their nightly call, Florence's insecurity gets the better of him. "You've been talking about Daniel a lot," he says, trying to sound casual. Rechelle, sensing the tension in his voice, reassures him. "He's just a colleague, Florence. There's nothing to worry about." Her words soothe him temporarily, but the jealousy lingers. Meanwhile, Rechelle grows frustrated by Florence's unspoken doubts. She knows he supports her, but his occasional comments about her work relationships make her feel as though he doesn't fully trust her. The tension reaches a boiling point during one phone call when Florence questions why she didn't answer her phone earlier. "I was in a meeting, Florence," Rechelle says, exasperated. "You need to trust me." Their argument leaves both of them feeling hurt, but it also forces Florence to confront his insecurities and reflect on how they're affecting their relationship. Florence, determined to repair the rift between them, seeks advice from his friend and lab partner, Marcus. Marcus, who has known Florence for years, listens patiently before offering his perspective. "You're scared because she's in a different world right now," Marcus says, "but you have to remember why she chose you in the first place. It's not about her colleagues or the distance, it's about the connection you share." Inspired by his friend's words, Florence decides to write a heartfelt letter to Rechelle. In the letter, he apologizes for his doubts and expresses his unwavering belief in her and their relationship. He admits his fears, but also promises to work on overcoming them for the sake of their future together. When Rechelle receives the letter, she's deeply moved. She calls Florence immediately, her voice soft with emotion. "Thank you for this," she says. "It means more than you know." The conversation marks a turning point for them. They both acknowledge the challenges they face, but reaffirm their commitment to each other. As Rechelle's project in Belmont nears completion, her company offers her a permanent position there. The promotion is a dream opportunity, but it comes with a heavy price. leaving Silverwood and Florence behind. When Rechelle shares the news with Florence, he's stunned but supportive. "This is your dream, Rechelle. I'd never want to stand in the way of that," he says, though his heart aches at the thought of losing her. Rechelle, however, is torn. She realizes that while her career is important, so is the life she's built with Florence. Seeking clarity, she visits her mother in Lakeside, their family's hometown. During a heartfelt conversation, her mother reminds her that true happiness comes from balancing love and ambition. Returning to Belmont, Rechelle makes her decision. At the project's final celebration, she announces to her colleagues that she's turning down the offer. Her declaration is met with surprise, but Rechelle feels a sense of peace. When she returns to Silverwood, Florence is waiting at the station, holding a bouquet of lilies. Rechelle runs into his arms, tears streaming down her face. "I realize something," she says, her voice steady despite her emotions. "My dreams aren't complete without you in them." Florence pulls her close, his own eyes misty. "And I'll always be here to share them with you." With Rechelle back in Silverwood, she and Florence fall into a rhythm that feels both familiar and exciting. Their relationship is stronger than ever, having endured the trials of distance and doubt. However, Rechelle is left pondering her next steps professionally after turning down the offer in Belmont. One evening, Florence surprises her with a gift, a journal titled Our Shared Dreams. "You've given up a lot for us," he says gently. "Let's figure out how to build something that works for both of us." Inspired by his thoughtfulness, Rechelle begins brainstorming ways to merge her advertising expertise with Florence's scientific knowledge. The idea sparks a proposal for a campaign focused on innovative science education. Excited, they spend late nights crafting the pitch together, bonding over shared goals. Rechelle submits the proposal to her agency, which is thrilled by the unique concept. They greenlight the project, assigning Rechelle as the lead. It becomes a collaborative effort with Florence, blending their worlds in a way neither thought possible. As Rechelle and Florence's project gains traction, it attracts significant attention from the media and professional circles. While this recognition is exciting, it also brings new challenges. Critics question Rechelle's decision to work so closely with her partner, speculating that her professional success is tied to their relationship. Rechelle, who has always prided herself on her independence, struggles with the public scrutiny. Florence, too, faces pressure from his colleagues, who worry that his involvement in the campaign distracts from his research. Tensions rise as the couple navigates the added stress. During one particularly heated argument, Rechelle snaps, "I gave up a huge opportunity in Belmont for this. I thought we were building something meaningful." Florence retorts, "And I've rearranged my entire life to make this work. You're not the only one making sacrifices, Rechelle." The argument leaves them both shaken. Realizing they've let external pressures affect their relationship, they agree to take a step back and refocus on what truly matters: their connection and shared vision. Determined to overcome the obstacles, Rechelle and Florence work together to address the criticisms. They decide to hold a press conference to discuss the project's purpose, highlighting how it blends creativity and science to inspire the next generation. The press conference is a resounding success, showcasing their authenticity and passion. Rechelle delivers a heartfelt speech about her journey, emphasizing how Florence's unwavering support has been instrumental in her growth. Florence, in turn, praises Rechelle's brilliance and dedication, making it clear that their partnership is built on mutual respect and admiration. The public response is overwhelmingly positive, silencing critics and strengthening their professional reputations. The experience brings them closer, reinforcing their commitment to one another. As the project nears completion, Florence surprises Rechelle with a private celebration. He takes her to a secluded spot by the river where they shared their first serious conversation. Under the moonlit sky, he presents her with a bracelet engraved with the words, "Partners in life and dreams." Rechelle, moved to tears, whispers, "I couldn't have done any of this without you." Florence smiles, "And I wouldn't want to do it with anyone else." The project's launch is met with widespread acclaim, cementing Rechelle and Florence's roles as pioneers in their respective fields. As they celebrate their success, they reflect on the journey that brought them to this point. Rechelle receives an unexpected offer from a global advertising firm impressed by her innovative approach. This time, the offer allows her to stay in Silverwood while working remotely, a perfect balance between ambition and stability. Meanwhile, Florence is offered a grant to expand his research thanks to the exposure from their campaign. The grant includes funding for a state-of-the-art lab, which he excitedly begins planning. With their careers flourishing, Florence decides it's time to take the next step in their relationship. During a weekend getaway to Crystal Lake, he proposes to Rechelle in the most heartfelt way. Kneeling on the dock where they first realized their feelings for each other, Florence says, "You've always been my anchor and my inspiration. Will you continue building this dream with me as my partner for life?" Rechelle, tears streaming down her face, nods. "Yes, Florence. 1,000 times yes." Their engagement marks a new chapter filled with love, growth, and shared dreams. Florence and Rechelle begin their engagement with a mix of excitement and challenges. As news of their engagement spreads, they are inundated with congratulations, but also faced with mounting responsibilities. Both are determined to make their wedding meaningful while balancing their thriving careers. Rechelle throws herself into planning the wedding, opting for an intimate ceremony in the picturesque Silverwood Hills, where they shared many cherished memories. Florence, ever supportive, assures her that he'll handle any details she finds overwhelming. Together, they choose a theme that represents their journey, love through the seasons. Their families come together to support the preparations. Rechelle's parents, who were initially apprehensive about Florence, now adore him for his kindness and unwavering support. Florence's reserved but warm parents welcome Rechelle into their family with open arms, further strengthening the bond between the two families. In the midst of planning, Rechelle receives a prestigious industry award for the project she spearheaded with Florence. She dedicates the honor to Florence during her acceptance speech, calling him her greatest inspiration. The moment moves him deeply, reminding him of how far they've come together. Florence, meanwhile, begins setting up his new lab, excitedly sharing every detail with Rechelle. Despite their hectic schedules, they prioritize spending quality time together, whether it's cooking dinner or taking quiet walks by the river. The day of the wedding arrives, and the scene at Silverwood Hills is breathtaking. The venue is adorned with seasonal blooms, symbolizing the changes and growth in their relationship. Close friends and family gather to celebrate the couple, their smiles and laughter filling the air with warmth. As Rechelle walks down the aisle in a stunning gown, Florence can't take his eyes off her. His heart swells with emotion as he sees the woman who has been his partner in every sense of the word. Rechelle, too, feels an overwhelming wave of gratitude and love as she meets Florence's gaze. Their vows are heartfelt and deeply personal. Florence promises to always support Rechelle's dreams and cherish the moments they create together. Rechelle, in turn, vows to stand by Florence through every challenge and celebrate every triumph. Their words bring tears to the eyes of everyone in attendance. After the ceremony, the celebration is a joyous affair filled with heartfelt speeches, laughter, and dancing. Florence surprises Rechelle with a song he secretly composed for her, leaving her both in tears and in awe of his thoughtfulness. As the night winds down, Florence and Rechelle steal a quiet moment under the stars. Holding her close, Florence whispers, "This is just the beginning." Rechelle smiles, leaning into him, "And I can't wait for what's next." Their honeymoon is a perfect blend of relaxation and adventure, with visits to tranquil beaches and bustling cities. During their travels, they discuss their future, dreaming of a life filled with love, laughter, and shared successes. Months after the wedding, Florence's lab is up and running, and Rechelle has taken on a hybrid role that allows her to work from home and travel occasionally. They find joy in the everyday moments, cooking breakfast together, working side by side, and making time for small adventures. Florence continues to support Rechelle's career, often offering advice on her projects. Rechelle, in turn, becomes his biggest cheerleader, attending his presentations and marveling at his brilliance. One evening, as they sit by the fireplace, Florence surprises Rechelle with another journal. This one is titled Our Life Together. "It's for all the dreams we haven't dreamed yet," he says with a smile. Rechelle takes the journal, her heart full. "Here's to dreaming together forever," she says, kissing him softly. Thank you for watching. Hope you enjoyed the story. Please don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe for more delightful stories.